Hi guys, welcome to I guess one of my first episodes of Vanguard Zero in a very long time. So welcome to my channel. I am J.J Mr. Rogers, or you could just call me J.J. Nice to meet you all. Hopefully you're doing fine. So on Twitter early today or early yesterday, depends on when this is going up, I posted what I think is a very rough initial thought that I have of how the meta is going to be shaping up in Vanguard Zero Set 4, which is coming up relatively soon, and it's going to be featuring the ladder reward of Perfect Riser as well. So that might also, in fact, maybe change the way how the ladder might be shaping up and twist it a little bit differently. But I'm kind of trying to focus a little bit more on the tournament scene, what we probably might be seeing in tournaments. Um, I guess we can compare them to ladder and in tournaments as well. It's a little bit different because in terms of how the ladder has been seen for this season, everybody was just kind of like waiting for the season to be over a little bit to kind of get into the actual format that everybody sort of remembered. Just everybody being very enamored with the end, Phantom Blaster Overlord and MLB. Which is like sort of like the big pinnacle three, but everybody sort of forgets about Tsukiyomi, who's actually still pretty good even after being released just a month ago. Just a month ago, she's still relatively going to be a strong deck and a contender in the meta as well. So we can get into the list. I'll give you a bit of my thought process. We got a bit of a rundown as to what I think could be potential potential things that be impacting our meta on a whole. So small disclaimer again. This is my own thought process behind it. I'll explain, and hopefully, if either you agree with me or you disagree with me, post it on Twitter, post it on my Discord. Hopefully, I'll be posting that in the description of my video, so you could just come on my Discord, yell at me about it, and then we can hash it out and talk it out as a mature individual. So let's go into the S rank. So we're gonna actually go from D tier into S tier. We sort of make our way up, discussing every single, not every single deck, of course. It's sort of like a couple of them are pretty short and sweet. I kind of like. I really don't like having S tier as a rank overall or D tier as a rank overall because all the decks in general are actually pretty playable. In Zero, a lot of the decks that actually were pretty bad in TCG are actually relatively okay in Zero. It's really good in Zero. And then of course, don't forget there's also the nerfs. That'll be taking place soon, which is going to be about Wingle Brave and Tejas. So we'll get into that in a bit as well. So we have set 1 OTT. So baby OTT with Apollons and CEOs and stuff like that. Unfortunately, that's going to kind of it's not to say it's not going to be good or anything. It's just going to be like you're playing on 10k base, and a lot of the current rear guards, even right now, can hit very easily for 12k or above 16 or above 20 sort of thing right now. Or like you have a lot of decks that can incidentally hit over those numbers, right? Or there's like more consistent ways of those being able to get to those numbers very fast. And of course, do have Tom as a win condition. You do have CEO that can allow you to draw into more PGs, and you can manipulate your stacks. So probably playing crits to be a bit more aggressive. It might be a bit handier to get your wins in. But people nowadays are actually holding on to more PGs than not. And even though you do happen to run Tom, you do have situations where opponent can force you as the CEO player to place down some rear guards, or else you'll be taking that L. And we do have also the boy Basker, Grand Blue down here. Unfortunately, we only have the first wave of support right now, and it's been about 3 sets so far, passed them by. This came out just before, I think like 1 or 2 weeks just before set 2 came out, and it was a relatively good contender on the ladder. It was a pretty good, tier. I think maybe like B, maybe even cusp of tier A at a time when our carpool and our options was very limited at the time, and it also gives support to Grand Blue players who also like the deck a lot. But right now, at the moment, the only thing that it has going for it is Night Mist combo, which is more or less the ability to sort of just spam interceptors the entire time. And if you have Night Mists that are around 11k because you sent it sent to a couple copies to the drop zone with Chappie. That's kind of like the only way that you can accumulate a bit of value and put a little bit of pressure on your opponent. You do have the ghost ship. You kind of play. You need to play maybe like at least like 1 or 2 copies of, so you can keep some defensives if you go into the Spirit Exceed Baskirk combo play, which is Baskirk. You ride the Spirit Exceed. You go into the Superior Ride combo that puts like 4 in your soul. Yeah, 4 in your soul. Him as the grade 3 becomes 5. So you ride Baskirk. You soul charge 1 for turn. You Mega Blast. You recall your whole entire field. You Superior Ride the Spirit Exceed, which puts you on 11k base again. But all your columns are relatively weak and very small. You do have the sort of like zombie come back to life mechanic, the reanimation of it, but there's a lot to be desired. Imperial Daughter. Why put it so low? It's sort of like we did see it at the Vision Clash of Kings tournament, but outside of that, it's sort of like it just was used as sort of like an OTT option because you could probably you could have slotted that in with like C, Tsukiyomi, and it probably would have done just as well with crits too, because you more or less play Imperial Daughter with crits and you try to finish off with Tom. That's kind of it. You just chill out and sit on and wait for Tom. You're a 21k base, and sometimes your opponent can be brick walled by it. But there's a lot of clans currently that can kind of just slam. Like after this set, especially after this set, you're gonna have too much clans that can just hit over 21 relatively easy, and that's kind of like the only thing that it had going for it. And in that same vein, you can also put Cocoa in this set. Cocoa does have an issue just like CEO, and like Imperial Daughter. It's sort of like it does very cool and cute things, and you can kind of pressure your opponent if you go up very fast. But it's a 10k base, and all your stuff are 10k base. They're not 11 like Fromages for Battle Sisters. And being 11 right now in this meta is going to be very important. Being 13 also is going to be very relevant because there's a lot of clans that are going to be taking a lot of options to hit over that 11k or hitting over 10k or hitting for 20 sort of thing. And that's kind of why I put it there. No Life King. I don't think that DI is really well positioned right now in terms of in a tournament scene or in tournament setting. You do have some, ways of being able to clear out your opponent's board and stuff, but there's a lot of times where you need to use a lot of your hand to sort of trade 1 for 1 for your opponent's stuff. And oftentimes your opponent is either playing, you're going to be matched up against a lot of Shadow Paladin, Royal Paladin, and a lot of Kagero, and a lot of those decks sort of do the same thing that you're probably trying to do, but they're using or requiring a lot less stuff, sort of thing. So I don't know. It seems like you can kind of choose some wins if they don't hit into any PGs, but that's very less than likely. You do have still Vampire that can kind of be cheeky as a win condition, but I think Demon Eater is still fundamentally better because at least you can get rid of some of your opponent's rear guards by hitting into like an interceptor or something, right? And then you have the Amber Dragons, sort of the same situation after they got nerfed. I would probably put them at somewhere around a B or even after Blouse, which is sitting in A if it still had its old skill, because you could actually challenge Royal Paladin. You could actually challenge MLB if they're probably trying to play safe and stuff. And you could get rid of like the back row units. You probably want to save like a Blaster Dark or something, or Blaster Blade, but they don't accidentally burn a card in their hand if they have like a huge hand or something. But it does have like the 12k Interceptor. Can be kind of annoying for a lot of clans on lower part of this list to deal with, because I need to commit way more cards to kind of hit into it. So I prefer, it's probably like better maybe at the top of C, Imperial Daughter, and then Dark Irregular there. So this seems a little bit better. So then for B, I put at the top of B, I put it's kind of interchangeable with these two. I put Good Stuff Kagero, and I put Pale Moon. There's sort of like similar. There's not much disparity between the two. The only reason that Good Stuff Kagero is a little bit better than Pale Moon is that Pale Moon needs Golden Beast Tamer, or else it doesn't function, or it doesn't go off at all. And that makes it very hard for it to deal with situations where you only have Manticore and a Crimson in your soul, and that's it. Right? Yeah, and like this like good stuff. Kagura has a blockade as a finisher, has Overlord as a finisher, has Waterfall as a main ride. There's a lot of avenues you could attack from because since you don't have the end, you can have different angles to attack from. So it's probably best against like everything else on the lower part of the ladder. But in terms of a tournament setting, you'd be fighting against a lot of VNs, a lot of PBOs, a lot of MLBs, and just having those cards are not enough when you're getting slammed for 20k plus turn per turn, and getting like all your PGs are gonna be robbed out of your hand every single turn, putting against the higher matchups on the list. Um, let's see. Pale Moon, we discussed this. 26 columns, 26k columns without trigger on a Crimson Beat on a Golden Beast Tamer turn is actually really strong. Have the Deep Police lower than Pale Moon because there's a lot more cards that you need for Deep Police, be it Dayusha or otherwise. I mean, you need a Dayusha, but you need like Mask Hero, and you also need the Grade 1 to get the 4k power, or you need Cosmo Beak to get the 4k power, or the Grade 3. And it's fine, like fine and dandy if you get all of it off, but sometimes you don't get the Grade 2, you know, and you don't have the soul for it. And you do not want situations like that to happen every single time in a tournament, right? And decks like PBO uh, can have situations where he stays on a 10k base, but at least he gets 20k in a crit and he retires something from your opponent, which still is a lot more utility in comparison to him. And y'all, same thing with Stunblock Kruger. He doesn't have like power requirements needed to be able to use his skill to restand or anything. He can keep on smashing your opponent's face in every single time. So it's lower on the list because of that. I put Bermuda a bit lower than DP because of the crit scaling and the damage exchange that you can have. Bermuda can also probably be higher as well, but how I currently value it is that on the first wave of support, a lot of the clans sort of have some of the things that you need to function, but probably Reindeer is the best of all of them right now since she's just generically good because she goes off more times than not, and it's 13 grade 3s in a format, so it's sort of like a 1 out of 3 chance of being able, like a 33.3 a 33.3333 just percent chance of being able to hit in a grade 3, and that percentage usually increases by a lot. And you do have Pacifica sort of able to help you out to be able to filter through your deck a little bit to get some cards, which is nice. But fundamentally, you being stuck on a 10k base if you're not playing Riviere does kind of suck. But good news in the future, they'll be buffing the grade 1 starters for like Vortimer, Riviere, all the chain rides in the future might be getting a little buff. So it'll be really interesting to see the dynamic on the ladder after that changes. And my favorite boy, Galachad, the deck that has been pushing me pushing me a lot to play a little bit of Royal Paladin. I loved playing this deck. It's one of my favorite decks in set 1. No, set 1 or 2. No, set 1 or 2 or 3. But in the TCG, I'm referring to the TCG, by the way. Referring to the old TCG, BTO3, BTO2, I think. When it came out, it was one of my favorite decks to play. I had so much fun playing this thing. You didn't win a lot with it. Even now, in Zero, I think in Zero, I have a way better win rate with it than I ever had in TCG, which is interesting. But the reason I put it so low on the list in terms of B tier, it's because of the inconsistency of it. It's sort of like you gotta pray to hit it. You can mix it with Garmor, which makes it very very strong because it gives you an extra angle of attack. But I'm referring to pure. You not mixing it, or you're playing it with Soul Savior Dragon. You can play with Soul Savior Dragon also as an option. But still, there's like so many pieces, and if you're basically gonna mix it with Garmor, you might as well play Garmor MLB if you're gonna be doing that. If you know what I'm saying. So there's like too much stuff that is in a way of it. You have to use too much of your counterblast for things that you don't need it for, stuff like that. All right, and then on to A tier. So don't want to be taking too much of you guys' time. We're gonna be trying to breeze through as much as possible. So in a few sentences or less, Perfect Riser is an inconsistent MLB. Well, technically they're just, if the nerf goes through, they'll be just as inconsistent, but there's a lot more searchability on the MLB side, and that's why I rank it higher still. The Spike Brothers, not because Lim Roof plays this. I personally think, because of the mechanic with Siegfried and the amount of grade threes that are in the format right now, I still think this could be like a pocket pick. And of course, there's like Western representation as well. That people are probably going to be taking more or different cards in it. And plus, it's getting support. Well, not soon, but in the future, it's going to be getting support. And these top three or these top four are going to be around for a very long time. So we'll probably we'll see a resurgence of more Spike Brothers in the future. And I can't wait to see how that turns out for it. But as of right now, I consider it like under under risers, because if either of them, there's a lot of matchups between both of them, or them versus a whole lot of stuff. Spike Brothers can challenge every one of these on top ladder right now. In terms of like hitting for power numbers, like Spike Brothers hits for like 26 or 21 or 22 or 23 very easily, depending on if you're playing Assault Squad or if you're playing Tough Boy. But still, it's very easy for them to hit these type of numbers. Garmor. I put him pretty high on this list because of the passive skill of Garmor being able to create interceptors for you. The active skill on place on ride, discarding card, you filter some like bad units that you don't need. Some if you don't have the counterblast for it, you get rid of maybe like a dead blaster blade or whatever. You usually want to save one for the end game, but you can create like an interceptor out of your deck. Superior call one, it filters, it gets you grade threes and stuff. It's really nice. But I think in the future, um, it might come down to B tier, if depending on the ladder changes, and it might end up being mixed with MLB to give MLB sort of an extra reach to be able to contest a lot with the meta. It'll have like Garmor does have a pretty testy matchup against Good Stuff Kagura, because a lot of Good Stuff Kagura list plays either Goku, Blockade, or just pure Waterfall. So we'll see how that turns out. And then we have Blau. Blau is sort of like a all-in face roll sort of strategy, I guess. It's not like Unga Bunga, but it's sort of like you need to have the pieces. You need to have the 12k interceptor. Like there's a lot of pieces you need for Blau to go off. There's like toolkit, interceptor, and a grade 3 sort of thing, or and the grade 1 of course to search a grade 2. You don't really need the grade 2, but you need the grade 1, and that's the most important one. And if you don't see the grade 1, then the grade 2 becomes more important. So if you understand what I'm saying, it's sort of like it creates a dynamic that even if you do play 4 copies, potentially 8 copies of a particular card, it's not all the time you'll be guaranteed to hit it. And that's the curse of chain rides, right? And that's what the S tier has very little issues with. Because they don't really need too much particular pieces. They just need to ride, and that's the most important thing. They need to just hit to grade 3, and they're good to go. Um, all right, now we're gonna go from back to forwards. So we're gonna go with Tsukiyomi. So why I put Tsukiyomi lower than MLB, even though there's a potential that MLB is going to be nerfed. And the reason why he's on his position is sort of like I mentally already put in the nerf for it already for the MLB, but I'll get to that in a second. So I chose Tsukiyomi here on the list as an S tier, is I feel that in tournament setting it's very rewarding for when you are clinching out maybe like the third game, and Tsukiyomi can guarantee you a win by having a Tom as a win condition. It's a win condition oriented deck. You have very few of those in the Vanguard at the moment, and Tsukiyomi is one of the last few of them. Because you had it in set 1 OTT, you have it in Imperial Daughter, and you have it currently in Tsukiyomi. Tom is a win condition. He doesn't particularly carry Tsukiyomi, because Tsukiyomi can also win on her own by you memorizing your stack or at least noting it down, whatever. But at least it gives you something to work towards. And there's different variations of Tsukiyomi. You could end up playing with crits, no crits, with stands, no stands. But that's the versatility of Tsukiyomi. It is a wild card, right? You don't know exactly how it's going to be positioned for you. You're not going to know until they flip their first trigger. You're going to be like, oh, well, crap. If I held on to my PG, then I would have known. Because there's also some versions of Tsukiyomi that doesn't even run Tom. And that's going to even catch you by surprise. I'd be surprised with that, because I'm personally of the notion that I like Tom in my deck, at least to give me a failsafe for, if all else fails, and I don't want to have to think too much and struggle too much of how many PGs my opponent has. I kind of want to put my opponent on only having an heal as an out, and that's it for me. But it's a chain ride deck, so that's kind of like why I have it kind of so low, or else it might have been like next to the PBO sort of thing, right? Um, but I do think that MLB is still higher than it because it's still a 12k base if you get your pieces off, and it's a deck that only needs to ride to grade 3 to get it off. Tsukiyomi is way more restrictive in that regard because at the earliest start in the turns, you don't really have ways of being able to filter towards the grade 3 you need to get. MLB does. MLB has Libergal. You might not need Wing or Brave that much anymore, but it can have a lot more hands with in comparison with Tsukiyomi that hits for 22 plus crit, and it has crit for the rest of the game, and you're PG checking your opponent for the rest of the game, and you have Blaster Blade as a retirement, so then it allows you to get a free extra point of damage on your opponent, which is insane in comparison to other clans. So that's why I put it so high. Even though it is more high roll, I wouldn't rule it out just because it got nerfed. So anybody who's sort of like tossing their MLBs, you're doing it too preemptively. Wait and see on tournament results, and then we get to decide. So that's kind of like why I still find it better than Tsukiyomi. PBO, good stuff. It's basically like if good stuff could draw cards. If good stuff Kagura could draw extra cards without having trigger requirements to go off of you and not having like extra crits and stuff per time that I need it, sort of thing. You sack your field to do it, but it doesn't matter. There's so many good compositions, good lists for PBO right now. It's sort of like always been one of those like underdog sort of decks, sort of like you wouldn't really expect it to do so well in tournaments sometimes because it's Unite Sanctuary. It calls units to the board and it gets a crit. And of course, people can PG it, but it's sort of like it just keeps on chugging along every single turn. And even if you try to damage or control it, it's just gonna keep on smashing your face in. It's just gonna keep on going in. And it has counter charge with Curse Lancer as well, so it's like it's putting you on a clock to do something. It's forcing you to take initiative, which is really good with Shadow Paladin. And then Dragonic Overlord, top of the list. You would think because I'm a Kagura main that I'd be biased by putting it up here, but I'm factoring in the post nerf to Tejas. I'm factoring in the post nerf to Wingo Brave. That the only thing that can really contest against PBO is Kagura. Since the Overlord is still a pretty strong unit, Berserk Dragon is also still a pretty strong unit, and as long as you can keep on getting rid of your opponent's grade 1s and 2s off the board and not letting him use his Phantom Blaster skill, then yeah, you can win relatively, well, not relatively easy, but you just have very good matchups. Having a 13k base Vanguard is going to be almost not impossible for all clans to deal with, but it's very hard because you're basically playing good stuff Kagura with a win condition, and that is hard for a lot of clans to deal with. So this is kind of where I positioned it. In the future, if depending on representation with MLB, the list can always change. At the end of the month, I'll probably do a review, and we'll take a look back and see how this has paired up or matched up, right? So then we're gonna go over to the Fighters Gacha, and we're gonna take a look at the sets that we can probably end up expecting. The dates are often not going to be correct because we have had recently that the month has shifted up and the things that we get has fluctuated. We're getting some stuff like the guaranteed triple rare gacha ticket system that was supposed to be introduced maybe like in a month from now. We're getting it this month, and if we're getting the banner split or not, this is also going to be a factor as well. If we're getting the banner split or not, tournament representation is going to also be impactful as well. So I'm going to be very interested to see how this is going to turn out. This is my first sort of like rough analysis of it. Of course, if you don't agree with it, you're inclined to discuss otherwise. But this is my own thoughts. And hopefully you guys have a wonderful day. So be awesome, stay awesome. And I'll see you guys next time in the next video. Bye bye.